keep the phone.
Drill.
There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the Infinity Gems. It is the middle ground between the big two and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, The Church of Failure, and with me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Ayrton McCartney. How you doing today, buddy?
Still recovering from that wild party last night, but
All right.
you know,
Well,
I'll make it through the show.
all right. Well, I don't know that you're actually showing up on the Discord overlay, which is fantastic. It's just another epic failure that is Ayrton. However, our guest, Mr. Mike Murphy, is in the Discord with us tonight, and we are here to talk about his comic, The Gods Fear Me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for reaching out and then expressing interest in coming on. We love having creators on, especially when we can go through their Indiegogo audio drop there. Can you guys hear us okay? Oh, I'm a little low. That's pretty usual. I can up it in the Discord here, I believe. This is usual. We're pretty terrible.
No, that's no problem.
Yeah, we're pretty awful at this. I just wanted everyone to understand. Can you guys hear me okay? I mean, am I coming through low with you guys? I
can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna up it in the OBS and see if that fixes anything. Hopefully it does. If not, then we will figure it out as we go along. I don't want to get too far off track here. So we've got the Indiegogo campaign, The Gods Fear Me, Book 1. And when I was looking over this, what was it? Probably about 2 or 3 months ago when this first came to my attention from seeing it on Twitter. And just a little description. Androids and aliens battle across the wastelands of Earth for the fate of all mankind.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
I mean, what more do you want out of a story, really? Especially in a comic book, right?
I mean, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, so far people seem pretty receptive to it.
Yeah, I definitely. There we go. I got Ayrton in there. Sorry, but no, I definitely saw that you guys funded late last month, right before Halloween, and there was a little bit of a victory lap that I saw going on Twitter, and that was well deserved. Because, like I said, how close to the deadline did you guys cut it?
It was pretty close. We had to extend an extra 30 days, so we ran the full 60, and we had about 3 days left, and we needed something like 450 before we had funding.
Okay.
And like in that 3 days, like I was, just to double check, is there cursing or should I keep it PG?
No, say whatever you like, man.
Okay.
We crossed the line of being a family show a long, long time ago.
All right, just making sure. Yeah, like in that last 3 days, like I was gonna bust my ass, and basically promote for like as close to 72 hours straight as I could, and thankfully, Ethan Van Sciver, he took a few minutes during one of his streams where he was just hanging out by himself, and he highlighted it and expressed the position we were in, and yeah, like that 3 days worth of work turned into about 10 minutes and we were funded.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's like that. And don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I absolutely appreciate every time Ethan Van Sciver will take the time out of his day to promote a book, because he is just such a powerhouse in just in the industry, in the community, whatever you want to call it, in the movement,
Right.
however you want to describe this comics thing that we're all a part of now. Even down to fans. I mean, we've talked about it before. I'm not a creator. I've just read tens of thousands of comic books in my life.
You and me both.
Yeah, like I remember going through and just walking into a comic shop and be like, "You guys got a quarter bin?" Like, yeah. How much you want for the whole thing?
Exactly.
But no, and it's fantastic when he can get a book funded like that. But we've talked about it with I don't know if you're familiar with the creator of Grom, Gilbert Deltrez, the guy that did Galactic Rodents of Mayhem. We talked about it.
Yeah,
with him.
Gilbert's great.
Yeah, we talked about it with him, and one thing that I'm kind of curious about, and as a fan from the outside looking in, I'm wondering what we as a community need to do so that creators don't feel like they need that bump from that, that source in order for their project to be successful.
Sure.
I not that I don't like what he's doing. By all means, I want him to do it for everybody, but I know that he can't,
right.
And I don't want a creator that just doesn't get that shout out to walk on thinking, "Oh, well, my book wasn't good enough." Criticism is one thing, but let's be fair. We've all read comic books that were not to our liking, but we knew someone else that did like them. So
right.
I don't, the taste of one creator really shouldn't weigh the value of a work outside of that. And I've often wondered, like, what we as a community could do better as far as marketing these books, maybe. But I've seen what happens when you take on projects of that magnitude in this community as well.
Right. Yeah. It's it's a complicated thing with like a bunch of moving parts that go into it, right? Like, as far as like the reader or fan side of it, of course, like, retweets, if you're talking about Twitter,
Hmm.
like basically broadening that base always helps. But
Right.
in my experience, the most helpful thing is, because you were saying like not everybody likes everything.
Right.
Um, the most helpful thing that you can do is if there's a book that you like and like one or two people who would also like that book, like
Hmm.
specifically tell those people.
Right. Targeted marketing, basically by word of mouth. I mean,
Right, right.
that's how your small like indie products and in retail become popular. Like, oh, this local honey that you get down, at the girl in the pickup truck on the corner of such and such road. And then all of a sudden, that stuff's selling for $30 inside of boutiques, right?
Right,
Um,
right. Exactly.
so, I mean, there's that, and I think that it's funny you mentioned Twitter because I got into Twitter a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, it's been a year. Just
Okay.
with 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 everything that's gone on in the last year, it feels like a long time ago.
Oh,
Last
it's
August,
been a war at times, man.
yeah, but in
I got that
August,
1,000-yard stare.
uh huh, right. That mic drop retort that you develop in 280 character culture, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Um, but I think it's hilarious that of all the social media platforms out there, that Twitter has become as you said, like the battleground of the indie comics movement, regardless of where you stand on it. Professionals going after indie creators and indie creators going after indie creators. I made this joke in reference the other day. There's a scene in The Simpsons where Groundskeeper Willie is talking about brothers and sisters being natural enemies, like the English and the
Hmm.
Scots, and the Irish and the
Yeah,
Scots, and the Scots and the other
yeah.
Scots.
And the sky.
Damn Scots ruined Scotland. But that's kind of what it feels like on Twitter, and I just find it fascinating that that's the platform that pretty much gained all of this culture in one fell swoop. It wasn't Facebook, it wasn't Instagram, which being comic books as a medium, you would think that Instagram or one of these blogging sites would have become the haven for these creators, but no, it's Twitter in the midst of all the political upheaval and back and forth in every little industry and every community coming to war with every other community. Here comes comics, and now here we are in 2019, a year later, after Comicsgate has been defined and redefined and co-opted and grifted and all of that other good stuff. You got you got some comic creator sending his rear to other comic professionals, and it's been a ride. So one thing that I don't think I've ever actually asked a creator this, so I'm sorry if I am, if I overstep the bounds here. But what's it like being in the middle of that as a creator, as an indie creator? What's it like existing in that? As, some would call it a war field.
It's it's okay. So when we first dipped our toe into the whole Comicsgate thing, and like when we committed to it and said, hey, we are Comicsgate as a publishing house.
Right.
So when that first happened, I was expecting to take the brunt of it. For context, Chibi Comics is me and my wife, Selena Hernandez. I was expecting to take the brunt of the fallout, but what was funny was Selena was the one that got it the worst because I guess to the progressive woke crowd,
Right.
she was supposed to be one of them. Like she's a woman, she's Hispanic, and And so, like, she kind of fills a bunch of those check marks that they have in their heads.
Right.
And so that was kind of surprising. Like, everyone kind of had this attitude towards me of like, well, we expect that of you, Whitey.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely felt that myself. I've gotten to the point now where if I engage someone on Twitter, I'm not really satisfied until they've called me a Nazi. Until I get the Nazi brand out of them, I'm not happy. Like, come on, I know you got it in
Right,
there.
right.
Where are you hiding it? Play the
Right.
card.
You're thinking it. So that was kind of a hard adjustment at first. Like within the first 2 weeks, like she lost a bunch of clients, she lost a bunch of Patreon donors, and like with really harsh stuff like said to her like as they walked out the door
for creating a comic book on the wrong side, quote unquote, from the people who are supposed to be accepted.
Right, exactly.
Interesting.
But like once all of that kind of washed over us, and we're like, all right, well, we're in the deep end, and it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing was we really tried for a long time to kind of be Switzerland. Like we really did just want to be cool with everybody.
Right.
Like the Peter Simeti approach of like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to make comics. Like that's all that I am.
Some people just from what I've observed in that, some people just don't accept we can be cool with one another. Like we can disagree and still be friendly. That's just a foreign concept, especially again, and this is why I brought it up, but especially in somewhere like Twitter, which is adversarial by nature.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we, especially in the past, like I'd say 6 months or so, we quickly learned that wasn't an option. And, it can be dicey as a creator because you're basically placing your trust in fellow creators that they're not going to dick you over. And that has and hasn't bit us in the ass a few times with certain people.
Right.
But I mean, to be honest with you, like the best advice that I got was before we came out as Comicsgate, I would email your boy Zach back and forth once in a while. When his channel first started, like 2 years ago now, I would write him and I would be like, hey, I'm based in Portland, and these things that you're saying about Portland creators, I don't know how you know them, but you're 100% right. So we kind of like, I'd email him once in a while, and there came a point where I was like, hey, what we're doing career-wise just isn't working for us, so we're thinking about just coming out as Comicsgate. And he's like, the only thing that you're going to miss is not having to worry about your bills.
Yeah.
And he, that was the best advice that we got, because, like Selena and I kind of worked for 10 years on the outskirts of the industry, like doing like lettering and flats for small publishers and helping certain creators put together submission packets, putting together our own submission packets, and just kind of getting absolutely zero traction. And 10 years of that versus about a year and a half, and we have 2 funded projects and 3 lined up for next year. I mean, it's whatever negativity there is, I'll take it if it means stability that I've never known before.
Right. And it's almost like the people who are being negative against you are the people you don't want agreeing with you anyway, kind of situation a lot of the time.
Well, okay. It is that's true, but like there was some drama with like really close friends who were kind of family to us.
Right.
They kind of walked out of our lives over using a hashtag, but so that was a rough period for us. But
Right.
ultimately we did come to the same thing of like, well, even if we've known them for a decade, if they were willing to do that to us because we maybe sort of, but not even really disagree with them about pop culture and some political stuff, like, why would we want them in our corner anyway?
Right. Like you never know when that's going to come back and bite you anyway.
Right.
So,
And it is amazing something as, mundane and ridiculous as just a hashtag can cause that much drama between people.
Yeah, like me and one of the parties involved like sat down and had like a couple of like serious discussions, and I told him, I'm like, you realize you're willing to end like a 10+ year family relationship because I use a hashtag that you don't like, and I talk to some people that you disagree with. We could just not talk about that stuff and everything would still be what it is. You realize that, right? And it wasn't good enough.
I want to point out real quick, Stupendous 989 in the chat says, "Hi Mike, I've been rocking your T-shirt this weekend. 2 people came up to me
Hey,
while asking
awesome.
what that's from."
That's amazing. Thanks, dude. Yeah, I believe that is that's Stu. People may be aware on Twitter. I'm blanking on the condition. It might be like Usher's syndrome or something. His brother has this degenerative condition, and
Right.
people in the community kind of came together and just started donating like tons of books to this guy, just so that like he could experience them while he still had his eyesight.
Right.
And yeah, me and his brother, like we've become good acquaintances. He's a good guy.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I'm really a big fan of those guys. I've seen their story on Twitter a couple of times over, and I love seeing the tweets he puts up when his brother gets packages and how happy he is about it. It's amazing.
Yeah, me too.
It really kind of makes it makes me nostalgic for what comic books used to be when I was growing up.
Yes.
I'm a child of the '90s, so I grew up in everybody calls it the era where comics just fell apart, and I understand and agree with that to a certain extent. But what I also see in that is that was the era when we got the best stuff we read in that time. Like the stuff that completely shaped our views on the medium and kept us hooked on the medium with all '90s stuff. Death of Superman, Parallax, the Secret Wars 2 back in '92. Deadpool was created in '91. Kyle Rayner, the Batman animated series, the Spider-Man TV show,
Yeah.
the X-Men stuff. I mean, that's when comics were marketed well. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon and movies. All of that stuff is what made this generation a fan and kept us interested in the medium. And today, you don't have that kind of marketing even in the big industry. Even in Marvel and DC, like, yeah, you have comic book movies, but those don't sell comic books because they have nothing to do with the comic books.
Right.
You could go out and, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and there's such a huge percentage of the audience going to see these things that are like, well, I just enjoy going to see movies, and that's kind of the end of it for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not about the storytelling or anything like that, but, I mean, back when we were kids, you could get home from school, watch Batman the Animated Series, and then go to your local comic book store and buy a continuation of that storyline.
Exactly.
They did it right, like, and because you were there and because you liked Batman, well, maybe you'll like this Batman book. And nowadays, everything's just all gritty and grimy and teen and everything else, and there's no more fun stories to hook in kids that eventually grow into adults that like that gritty crap.
Sure, man. Like, I mean, like even to stick with the Batman analogy, like you could literally go to the store and buy, the animated series comic book, and
Mm-hmm.
that stuff was gorgeous. I mean, you had Bruce Timm doing certain issues. You had Mike Parobeck, like during the first 10 or 20 issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mike Parobeck is like one of my all-time favorite artists.
That-
You had Dini and other people from the show writing issues. Like
Mhm.
it was such, people love to crap all over the 90s, but they forget that stuff came out of the 90s. Kingdom Come came out of the 90s.
Alex, potentially the work that put Alex Ross in the public spotlight for the rest of his career. I mean, arguably.
Right. Right, yeah, and Marvel's before Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm.
You had Morrison's JLA, and in the late '90s, you had Marvel Knights.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people
2099.
say that, yeah, I think when people say that, what they're really talking about is the excess that took place between like '91 and '93.
Mm-hmm.
But that leaves out a whole bunch
crash.
of content.
Well, I think
Right.
people are looking at it from a financial standpoint because a lot of the people that care about comics now care about the value of old comics. They don't care
Right.
about the medium of comic books. They care about having an Amazing Fantasy 15. They care about having a Detective 27.
Right.
They are pissed off that they spent $50 a piece on 10 copies of The Death of Superman only for it to be worth $7 today.
Right.
But
Which
And
you still make a bit of profit off of that.
sure.
fif-
I
fif-
mean, and like I appreciate that side of like the indie movement and Comicsgate. I appreciate that we're also catering to collectors who missed that era, and I want to keep them happy. But for me, like my focus is primarily on storytelling, and I don't think since, I mean, call it 2008 to 2013 at the latest, I don't think that the industry has been in a healthy cycle of producing gripping must-have stories.
well, I think it's interesting that you single out 2008 like I do. Right around the time of Civil War is I think Civil War was a baby step almost, if you will, right? I think that Civil War was testing the waters to see what the market would bear, because that's the time. I mean, we already had events that happened in comics, but they weren't like really annual things in 2008. They were occasional things that stretched over a couple of titles and things like that. Civil War kind of changed the game a little bit because it was 170 something issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I always kind of go back to Hickman's Secret Wars 2019, or 2015, and that was 252 issues. So
That's crazy.
yeah, but back in 2008, I feel like the themes of Civil War with the opposition of liberty and freedom and all of that, I feel like that was Marvel testing the waters to see what they could get away with politically, as well
Sure.
as get away with as far as a selling point of 170 comic books that all tie together.
Yeah. No. Totally, man. I don't know. Like there was a podcast that I used to listen to, and one of the co-hosts was actually a shareholder in Marvel, so he would get to sit in on those teleconferences for shareholders like once a quarter or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
and he straight up said that the president of Marvel, and this must have been like 2012ish.
Mm-hmm.
The president of Marvel was like, we're raising the prices and we're putting out more books because we can, because the readers are showing that they'll keep buying them. So that whole era of like, oh, like it's just getting so complicated and expensive to produce this content, and we have to put out more content to subsidize the larger content. That was complete and utter horseshit.
Nice.
Imagine my cock.
Yeah, I've often thought so.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Beacon in the chat. How's it going, everyone?
Hey, Michael Beacon.
But no, I just think it's really nice to have someone that sees that perspective as well. Like, I didn't want to think I was going crazy thinking that the '90s weren't as bad as everybody said they were. But
No.
as a creator, let's circle back to your book here. Just kind of scrolling
Sure.
through the Indiegogo campaign, we've got the highlights. 32-page post-invasion sci-fi horror epic sets hundreds of years after the fall of the human race. So, this gargantuan tale is brought to you by Michael Murphy and Kristen Rossi. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
All copies will be signed by Mike Murphy. They invaded, we died. The Ancient Ones brought the human race to near extinction. Now the android Kedzie fights to reclaim our world and protect a young boy who might be the key to our salvation. So we do have at least one surviving human, right?
Yeah. So, without getting into like super detailed stuff about the plot, when the Madness Engine first awakens 200 years ago, him and the ensuing arrival of the invasion force kill about 70% of the entire population. And the remaining 30% of the population is placed into cryogenic stasis, because the logic being, well, if the presence of these aliens are driving us mad and making us kill each other, and then they're also killing us, if we're unconscious, we can't do any damage to each other.
Okay.
And once that happens, the company that funds these sleeper cities, as they're called, the company then starts to mass produce the android line that Kedzie is a part of. And the thinking with the androids is, well, if we're on ice and there's still this population of an invading force taking over the planet, androids have synthetic brains, so they're not going to be affected by whatever this thing is causing in the first place, so we can just have them do all the fighting for us.
Yeah. So that's where you get the and these. I think I've read somewhere on here, but I didn't want to assume if I haven't seen it again. These are Lovecraftian inspired aliens, from what I can tell. Correct?
Yeah, I love Lovecraft, and I love people who play off of Lovecraftian lore, like
Right.
John Carpenter, and I could go on.
Well,
but I feel like go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say the guilty pleasure that I had last year was the Archie horror Sabrina series, where, spoiler alert, in the end she ends up having to marry Cthulhu or
Right.
Cthulhu as as a, I don't know, sacrifice or a way to save everyone or something. I forget the exact plot, but I do know that was the cliffhanger ending, and she had to marry the Ancient One.
Right, and now no more issues of that book are ever going to come out.
Oh God, it's so sad. I love it so much.
I thought
Yeah.
your guilty pleasure was making me read stuff with excessive amounts of penises in it.
Oh, we just got done doing an Alan Moore month, Mike.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want that to sound worse than it was.
Right.
But we did.
No, Alan.
Oh, go ahead.
Alan Moore is very comfortable with his character's nudity.
Yes. Especially
That's
when
the good
they're
one.
when they're fish aliens in Neonomicon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That was.
Yeah. That whole thing is. I wanted to check that stuff out, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh well, brace yourself.
It'll change you.
It will.
Okay.
We did a review on it. I think we could show like 4 pages of that whole series. The chat went wild. Ayrton hasn't been the same since. Pretty great. He picked it. He didn't even know what he was doing. He was like, "Oh, that sounds cool."
Uh-oh.
Uh huh.
Here you go, buddy.
Yeah, And Church gives me no warning. He's just like, all right, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Right. Of course.
You did this to you. But I'm scrolling through some of the line art and the colors on this campaign that you've got, and I've got to say, like we clipped out the android's image for the thumbnail, but
Hmm.
these colors are amazing. Like I like the art style,
Oh, thank you.
but these colors, I mean, they're really good for not being
Thank you.
overly saturated.
Hmm.
I think that if you wanted to accomplish the look that you got here, I think you just 100% nailed it, because the use of the background glowing texture with the foreground of the almost like, it reminds me of like, I'm trying to think. There's a specific art style that I'm thinking of. It's like not like cartoony in a bad way, not like, but it's animated. If that makes sense.
Sure.
And I really like that. It's not hyper realistic. It is what it is, and it is shameless about that. And I really like that.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah. On the art side of things, like, I don't know. When I first read Trespasser by Alterna, which was a book that Kristen drew, I immediately knew that, like, at some point I wanted to work with him. I just didn't think it would be this soon.
Right.
And he usually does his own coloring, but he has like a number of projects coming out over the next like 6 to 9 months, including this.
Mm-hmm.
And the back and forth that we had during the whole campaign was like, well, if we hit 10K and it goes full color, like, who's coloring it? Because he couldn't firmly commit.
Right.
And so, just to show the reader what the book could look like if we hit 10K, like I did, the colors for these 3 pages. And once we hit funding, like, we sat down and we had a talk, and he was like, dude, you're coloring it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the way it came out. Like this is this your first experience coloring something, or?
No,
Okay. Alright.
we've done submissions, and I work as a freelance illustrator / writer
Okay.
professionally, so
Okay.
yeah.
As the writer on the project, I didn't know, because I've seen this before, where that's another thing that's really unique about indie work. You usually have creators pulling double, triple, sometimes doing everything for the book, writing it, illustrating it, coloring it. I mean, it's amazing what has come out of this, because you get to see things that you wouldn't normally. Like, I'd never expect to see again, personal feelings about Mark Waid aside, I know I'd probably never see a book that was written and illustrated or written and colored by Mark Waid, right?
Right.
I'm sure there's something out there somewhere. He probably tried his hand at it, but the fact that you get such talented people in this, little niche industry that aren't even, I wouldn't say aren't even, but aren't, like mainstream comic creators. And then you look at the lack of talent in mainstream comics right now, and it just seems a damn shame. But at the same time, I have a feeling that there's a lot more money to be made in indie comics than there are mainstream comics in the near future.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and speaking of Alan Moore, like, there was that interview that he just did, like, I think a week ago, where he just flat out said, to like up and coming or independent creators, like, don't bother working for publishers, just, put out stuff on your own. Like, it's more lucrative. So, like, if grandfather weirdo recognizes what's going on, like, I know the rest of the industry does too.
So, And yeah, we've been covering the Watchmen TV show. Did you have any thoughts on that so far? Have you seen any of it?
I couldn't even stomach the first episode, man. I had to check out. Like
I understand.
that is
Our audience demanded us watch the first 2 or 3 episodes and review them. And my main takeaway is that they wrote a completely different show, and then they put a costume on it that looked like a Watchmen character.
oh yeah, yeah. 100%. I paid a lot of attention to the production of that show, and like I have been like reading episode recaps and stuff, even though like I can't watch it.
Right.
But
That's probably why
yeah, like it.
the acting's
Go ahead.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it very, very much came off like, oh, you guys had like a grim and gritty superhero thing in the pipeline, and then you got the Watchmen license.
Yeah.
Well, my overall takeaway though, in watching up to episode 3, nobody's brought up episode 4 yet, and I don't mean to remind them, but episode 3 actually felt like it had some semblance of a show that would be called The Watchmen to it, and I think obviously
Oh,
it's
interesting.
because that one circles around Laurie Jessupic, who is now Laurie Blake, after the comedian. It actually wasn't the worst. Like, it was the best episode yet, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't like a lot of the woke stuff that they
Right.
had going on there, but as far as out of the 3 episodes that we've seen, it's not the worst of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw the stills where they showed just how much she misses Dr. Manhattan.
Yes, I saw that when we were going through your timeline. That's why I wanted to bring it up there. I wasn't gonna mention those still specifically, but now that we have, and
Right.
it's only right. It is an Alan Moore work. There does have to be full frontal male
Yeah.
nudity. But
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I've and like if you're mentioning, if you're thinking of the tweet that I think you're thinking of, like we did have that period of time after Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen where I think the publishers took some of the wrong lessons away from those 2 books,
mhm.
and we did steer away from the point, the message of those books.
Absolutely.
And they focused just on this, and they just focused on the surface level, right?
Mhm.
I feel like this is that same problem now, just transferring to other media.
Well, there's a let me try and frame this correctly. The grim and gritty comic thing. There are writers that can accomplish that really, really well. Frank Miller
Of course.
has done it time and again. Garth Ennis, Alan Moore, Warren Ellis, even. But it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Sure.
Alex Ross, I think, I'm a tinfoil hat kind of guy when it comes to Kingdom Come, and this isn't, because of any feelings I have about Mark Waid. But if you look at the similarities in the story between Earth X and Kingdom Come, those are both Alex Ross's stories.
Yeah.
Like, I think Mark Waid probably edited the book and took a writing credit to sell it, because people don't look at Alex Ross as a writer, but Earth X was arguably better and is crediting Alex Ross as a writer. So
yeah, and I know like later on, well, not even later on, but like during the production of Kingdom Come and like for a couple of years after, like there was some really bad blood between Alex Ross and Mark Waid. And I mean, now knowing what we know, like I think I can see who was in the right and wrong on that one.
Well, I like to say, I followed, briefly mute real quick. Thought I had to sneeze. I probably still do. But just on, there it is. Just on Twitter, you see Alex Ross, and anytime he tweets, you see what he's tweeting about. Art shows,
Right.
art shows, his artwork, showcasing things that he did when he was a little kid and how those pieces evolved over time. It's never
Sure.
personal gossip. It's never like drama. He's a grown man. I'm sure he has leftist ideologies. I have no doubt in my mind about it. I'm sure he probably is a little more centrist than leftist, but I don't doubt in my mind that he holds some of the same views that some of the people he works best with. I
Mhm.
can't. It's a crime, and I'm sorry, but I can't think of the name of the guy that writes Astro City at the moment.
Busiek.
Yes, Busick. Sorry, Kurt Busick.
Yeah.
He, he's a pretty prolific leftist, right? And you kind of start seeing that in his work after the first 2 volumes of Astro City, Volume 3 got really woke.
Right.
So
Yeah, those first like 3 volumes of Astro City are like some of my favorite stuff from him. And then the further it got in, I was just like, what is this? Isn't the same book, man?
right, you've lost the plot. Like you're carrying on the title of something completely different. So,
Right.
I don't know. We reviewed a book on here that made me think of early good Astro City and the Tick if they had a kid together, and that's going to be fun. But,
Oh, nice.
But yeah, let's get back over here to the Indiegogo campaign. The Gods Fear Me, the first of 3 planned installments, is 32 black and white pages with a full color stretch goal at 10,000 you mentioned earlier. So you're at 2,900 away from that.
Yeah.
Okay. Of sci-fi and horror with Lovecraftian overtones. There it is. I knew I read it. Featuring stunning art by Christian Rossi of Alterna's Christian Rossi, Alterna's Trespasser and Voidwalker, both of which were pretty fantastic. And Ayrton, I can only kind of guess that you've already picked up on it, but Mike isn't aware of this, but we always inevitably circle back to Alterna and Peter Samedi in this show, so we just have to give him a shout out pretty much every show. Shout out Peter Samedi. But we need your help.
Peter's such an amazing dude.
He is. Alterna Ween was great this year. We passed out. We passed out about 100 comic books. And then my comic shop, I turned them on to the idea. They got an order, and they also emptied out some of their True Believers and DC dollar books to give away as trick or treat things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I made sure to go through them and make sure they were at least appropriate.
Right.
I'm like, some of these you don't need to be giving away to little kids.
Of course.
But
might accidentally give away Neonomicon to a kid if you're not careful.
Right. Careful there.
No, you definitely don't want to do that. But we need your help to make this book a reality, and we hope you'll come with us on the journey. In addition to the great perks you see listed, we've got amazing stretch goals in mind. Once we hit funding, check them out. So the next stretch goal is postcards in the swag bag, trading card from art by Ethan Van Sciver, and that's going to be a trading card of your character in his style.
Yeah, he's most likely going to be drawing Kedzie, and it's going to be all him. I have no idea what he's going to produce, and I say this about Donald DeLay as well. Like, I have no idea what he's going to produce, and I kind of don't care. Like, I know I'll be happy with whatever it is.
Yeah. He could just send you a picture of a foot, and you'd be like, all right.
Right.
That's a great foot, Ethan.
Yep. That looks like Kedzy's foot.
No, I'm kidding, obviously, but yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I could commission something from him. Just draw something. All right, well,
Right.
here's an index finger. That's a great index finger, Ethan. Let me get this matted and framed right away. No, all jokes aside, I don't know, for some reason, the idea of sending a trading card of a foot back just amused me.
Right.
But full color unlocked with 10K stretch goal. Chibi Comics, thanks both for the outstanding gems for their contribution. And then you got other stretch goals: 10K, 12K, 15. Full color interiors. Main cover for The Gods Fear Me, Donald DeLay. Square binding at 15. Superhero horror story second book at 18. And I believe before the show we talked about that, but yeah, that's the one you really are hoping that we can hit, and I'm sure everyone that's backing is as well.
Yeah, I know straight up several people have written me and said I'm backing because I really want this to hit 18K because I want like 3 books for the price of 1.
Right. I gotta ask. I just saw this on the side. I didn't pay much attention to it the first time I scrolled through. Tell me about the Schemes and Scams special. That looked juicy.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's juicy. Like, how much do you want me to get into it, or do you just want me to cover what comes with the perk?
Oh no. However you want to do it, man. This is
Okay.
my platform
All right,
is
well,
yours. You say what you want to say.
Okay. Well, like anyone who follows CG knows like there's been some, drama and nonsense going on over the past like 2 or 3 months now. And like I was one of the ones that was, affected by Edwin Boyette departing Comicsgate.
Yeah.
And me and him and a handful of other people, some creators and some people from the community, we had a discussion that turned into a big kind of shouting match, and it ended with him holding the amount of money that Indiecron had made for our first campaign, Samurai and Dinosaurs, over my head when I talked about exiting the platform. So, I knew that for our second campaign, when we got down to that amount of money being needed before we had funding, I wanted to commemorate it. So that's where the Schemes and Scams special comes in.
Okay.
So for $872, you get everything from the campaign, plus you get some other really cool stuff. You get digital copies of the book and the prequel. You get everything in the swag bag. You get a copy of the book with the alternative cover by Preston Acevedo. You get a proof copy of the book. You're also going to be getting an 11 by 17 illustration of Kedzie done by me and Selena.
Okay.
And you're also going to be getting page 32, the last page of the book, the original art for it, sent directly to you from Kristen Rossi.
Oh, nice.
So I like it's kind of a very gentle middle finger, because I'm not trying to be a complete dick about the whole situation.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I didn't want it to just be, complete horseshit. I wanted people to know that, like, look, even with this amount of money, like, it is a serious perk and you're going to get your money's worth.
Right. No, I definitely feel that. That is pretty awesome. Like just the original art, and the proof copy themselves. I mean, that's something you don't see in a lot of campaigns. But No, I caught my eye and it made me chuckle a little bit, so I wanted to talk about it. But
Yeah, like I mean, basically, like yeah, and I won't name names, but like me and the other people who were involved with this, like we think we accidentally stumbled onto a lot of this stuff that ended up going out under the spotlight. We think we stumbled onto it like a few weeks before like him and the other parties involved were ready to get the wheels in motion,
right.
and he was not happy with any of us.
I mean,
Probably felt a little good though when you made this perk though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it did. Like, I mean, I thought of it and I'm like, all right, that's a pretty good idea. Like, I kind of have to do it now.
I mean that's all we do in our Discord, and that's why I wanted to get you in here so that we could implicate you on our schemes
Sure.
and scams. I mean, you gotta
Hmm.
be guilty by association.
Yeah, you have to be, right?
At 20,000,
It couldn't possibly be you're just asking a genuine question.
right? 20,000, the Gods Fear Me gets a higher paper quality. 22, Simon Sim Pothier.
Yeah, I believe it's Pothier.
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't know Simon, he's a really great Canadian artist who's kind of stepped up in the Comicsgate scene over the past 6 months or so, and we've become good buddies. He's an amazing guy, and he's kind of shaped himself into this incredible illustrator. One of the prints that we're giving away to all backers, he provided, and when we get down there, you'll be able to see it.
Okay. Well, these all. It seems like a lot of these go to increasing the quality of superhero horror story 13. But you get the main cover by Simon. You get 13 full color interior, or you get higher quality paper and square binding, and then the Gods Fear Me cover poster unlocked, and then 13 cover poster unlocked. So, I mean, if this book gets to 30,000, I mean, you're getting a huge package in the mail.
Yeah, like that Gemini mailer is going to be stuffed.
So, you've also got page 1 for the Million Eyes of Our Conquerors, the prequel novella.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You got go ahead.
And you just have to have the tentacles crawling all over the place.
Yes, of course.
Why would
my original concept for the book, for the cover, was going to be the founder of the company that's kind of our stand-in for Wayland Yutani. It was supposed to be just him standing looking at the end of the world out at through his panoramic window in his office.
Right.
And I was like, well, you could do that, Mike, or you could draw boobs. So.
Not really a hard decision there, was it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
and that's the shirt that Stu is now wearing.
So you also have the Million Eyes of Our Conqueror, Chapter 1, Page 1. The postcard prints, and this one by Sim is just, it's awesome. Like not that the one above it isn't, but the line work and
Yes.
the pencil work, the amount of time that probably took. That's just a really nice piece. And you've got a panel. All backers will receive a free PDF of Blowback, a short story written by Aaron Calamari, featuring cover by Vic King and interiors by Kristen Rossi. Double the Rossi for no charge. So there's another PDF that you're getting. So
Yes.
there is definitely some just some extras that are going on here. Like, this isn't a book that you're paying. What's the entry level on this is what for the physical copy?
$15.
Okay. So after shipping, you're out what, 20, 25?
Yeah, 25 total, including shipping.
Okay, so
Alright.
$25 shipped, and if this book gets to $35,000, they're gonna have to bring the package to your door because it's not gonna fit in your mailbox.
Yeah, we're gonna need a forklift.
So, no, I really like what I see. The storyline sounds like interesting enough, and you've kind of given us the idea of what the title actually means. The God Sphere, us these aliens are basically the ancient gods, and the android warrior main character is protecting someone who very well may be humanity's last hope. At this point, I would just open up the floor. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up or talk about, or?
No,
we have,
I mean that was
we have questions.
that was
and
pretty
stuff like
thorough,
that,
man.
We have some questions and stuff that we usually ask people, but I didn't want to keep you if you were needing to go or anything. We didn't really schedule a time slot or
Right.
anything. Usually the show runs about 2 hours, but
Mhm.
if
No,
you're okay,
I'm good for a little bit more, man.
all right, cool. So one thing that I do always ask all of the creators that come on here, your influences. What were your influences growing up as a kid in comics and in media and novels? Take the question however you want to, but as a creator,
Sure.
what brought you to wanting to do comics?
Well, I mean, I've basically my entire life been really stubborn and focused, and yeah, like the first thing I ever drew, my mom is a retired teacher, and she, when I was like maybe 3 or 4, she got me this giant chalkboard that they had decommissioned from one of the classrooms, and like the very first thing I drew was like this stick figure of Superman, and so like it's that's kind of always been it. Like my first 2 books were Sword of the Atom #1 and Gumby Summer Special, which I later in life learned out was by Arthur Adams very early on in his career.
Okay.
So my dad for the most part got me into the hobby, and like I loved comics and I loved drawing them, but like I never thought, as a kid you don't think about what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
No. I mean,
But
you have the stereotypical I want to be a fireman or a rock star, or
yeah,
a baseball player, or football player,
right.
A couple weird kids that were going to be archaeologists. Those guys actually did grow up to be archaeologists.
Yeah, oddly enough, they usually do end up becoming archaeologists.
But the rest of us, no, we had no idea what we were going to end up being when we grew up when we were kids like that.
Right. So, it's funny, we were talking about it earlier, but the moment for me was we had to take a family trip to my grandparents' house, and they lived way out. Like we're originally from Chicago, and they lived way out in Bufu land. Like for anyone that doesn't know, like Chicago is basically one giant city surrounded by nothing but like corn and wheat.
Connecticut's out there somewhere too, right?
Somewhere, like it's like in the tall grass. Like you just wander in, and eventually you'll find Connecticut. So the moment was we had to take that family trip, and when we got back, my dad had set up the VCR to time record the premiere of Batman the Animated Series.
Oh yeah.
And like I remember getting home, and like like the VCR was on. I had to rewind the tape and hit play, and just from like the very opening with the Warner Brothers logo and the deep horns, like I was just like, obviously this is what I'm doing with the rest of my life.
All right. Yeah. I said that too, but I just ended up reading all of and never getting around to making.
Okay.
I got sidetracked trying to read all of it.
Okay. Okay. So
Um,
so you too went into the tall grass.
I did. I found Connecticut
Okay.
though, and there was a comic book store
There
there.
you go. There you go.
I bought the quarter bin.
Right.
I tell people my biggest achievement in being a comics collector is not the Alex Ross autographs that I have, but it's the full run of readable copies of Rom Space
Hey, that's a great achievement, man.
Knight. But yeah, that's the kid that I was. I was like, hey y'all got any more of them warrior books that everybody hates? let me let me
It's a
let me read some of Bill Willingham's Elementals, guys.
yeah. There now you're talking.
Hey, I read Fables and I was like, who is this guy? What else did he do? What's this Elementals thing? This looks awful. I'm
Right.
gonna love it.
Yeah, Willingham's got like an interesting career, man. Like I haven't heard much from him lately. Like, what's he even doing now?
I don't know, but if you read Fables, I mean, I can imagine why a lot of people are really worried about working with him sometimes.
Sure.
He took some things that were supposed to be pure and did things with them.
Oh, well, yeah, he did.
And it wasn't on Zenoscope's time either. Like, we expect that kind of crap from Zenoscope, but not.
Right.
But no. Go ahead.
No, so I mean, like, in high school, like there was a brief detour. Like I was in a punk band for like 5 years, into like my first year of college or so. But even with that, like we reached a point where like they were getting serious and talk. Like we had recorded an album and they were talking about touring and stuff. And like because of my obligations I went to the American Academy of Art in Chicago. It's where Alex Ross went and the Mortal Kombat guys.
Okay.
Because of my obligations to there, like I was showing up later and later to band practices, and I would make it to shows just in the nick of time before we were supposed to go on stage, and like I would be out of practice and I would be missing cues, like so it got to that point where like we had to sit down and be like, look, what are you doing with your life? And I was like, I'm sorry guys, it's comics, like
Yeah.
So, I mean, pretty much from that point on, which is like 99, 2000 to now, like I've just been working on this one career.
So I mean, you've got almost 2 decades in then. That's impressive. Like to and you've started doing like work as like you said, doing submissions and stuff like that, and editing and things of that nature. Do you have any other titles out there?
I mean, there's some, like there's web comics that we did, and every year for Free Comic Book Day, my wife and I do a book called For Hire, which is kind of a love letter to the good days of Pixar and Bill Watterson.
Right.
So we do that, but like for the most part, like the stuff that we produced with the intent of getting picked up by a publisher, and like the closest we got was with our first book, Samurai and Dinosaurs. We actually produced that book about 5 or 6 years ago, and at that point, Archaea still hadn't been bought up by Boom. Archaea is the Mouse Guard guys.
Yeah. Oh, I'm familiar.
Okay. Well, yeah. Just in case anyone wasn't.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you mean for the guys in the chat app?
Yeah, right.
No.
So there was a point where Archaea was like having active meetings with us about publishing it, and this was right around the time that they got bought up by Boom. So Like a lot of stuff that they had in process kind of like fell through the cracks, and we were one of them.
Right. That's sad. Like that. Cause I definitely I keep up with Archaea because of Mouse Guard. Like anytime they put something out that looks relatively interesting, I think we may have actually reviewed one of their books on the show before.
Oh, nice.
But we do have some questions in the chat here. Stu says, "What was the story behind you coming up with the God Sphere mate? What made you think of that story?"
Okay. The bulk of the idea came from I was watching Prometheus, and like most people, I didn't like it. Again, coming back to Damon Lindelof and Watchmen. I didn't like it, but a lot of times I don't know if it's arrogance or what it is, but my brain does this thing of like, how could I make this better?
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that process. I like to tell people I'm an idea man. I can't ever like produce the artwork, but I have these what I consider brilliant ideas because I have a hard time assuming that I'm wrong.
I'm right there with you, man.
Go ahead.
So yeah. What I took from Prometheus was, I mean, everybody likes Fassbender as the android, and like I really dug the kind of primordial ancient facehugger thing that the engineer had to go up against towards the end of the movie.
Right.
And like I took those two things just stuck out in my head, and I was like, I don't know why this movie isn't just 2 hours of androids beating the piss out of those things. And
you never really think you're going to end up saying it, but there are times and places where Michael Bay is really what's needed in a movie, right?
Exactly.
Like there are movies so bad that Michael Bay would make them better.
I mean, hey, look, he gave us The Rock and he gave us Armageddon, and I don't care. I like those movies. So
yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. He also, however, put his hands in Terminator and Ninja Turtles. I want nothing to do with that. Or not Terminator, Transformers. No. I mean,
Transformers. Yeah. Whew, yeah, and he did The Island, which I'm like, what kind of Logan's Run ripoff is this, man?
Yeah.
I
mean, Shyamalan's bad, but he knows it.
Right.
Yeah, he embraces that.
Man, Shyamalan breaks my heart, man. Like, I've always, I don't know, like, I can never 100% shit all over that guy because, like, I do have like such a deep love for Unbreakable. Like, I love that movie so much.
No, and,
but The Happening.
Oh, I know. The not even the well, yeah, it was all the plants. The plants, they're killing us.
The Lady in the Water, that was a good one. With the guy that only worked out the one side of his body.
Exactly right, and he had the giant arm.
Yeah. It just made me so happy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, okay. And so, like, okay, besides Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, I can honestly say I enjoyed The Visit. Did you guys see that one?
No, I'm thinking of The Village. That's the one that I enjoyed. What was The Visit?
Okay. Right before he did Split, he did this real low-budget horror movie about kids that have to go visit their grandparents for the weekend. And it's really good. There is a Shyamalan twist in there, but I don't know. Like, I felt like for a second he was close to getting back to like finding himself, so to speak. But then we got Glass, and I'm like, all right, dude, we gotta talk.
Yeah, let's have a seat over there. But let's see. The next question is, do you have a rough idea of how you want to structure the story? And I think I could be wrong, but Einbrecht, correct me. I think he means like for the full 3-issue run with all the prequel and everything? Like, how do you have an idea on how that's all mapped out? Is that all mapped out and you're just writing it now, or is it all written?
It is very much mapped out. Like, here's I don't want to call it a spoiler. It's more of a tease.
Yeah, there you go.
Book two, there's going to be a time jump.
Okay.
Yeah, like book 2, like basically I'm structuring this so that it works as a 96-page graphic novel when it's all said and done.
All right.
But I'm treating each 32-page installment as like a condensed season of a TV show. Like think of a BBC season that's only like 6 or 7 episodes.
Right. It's episodic. You're
right.
You're making the stories something someone can actually enjoy reading individually.
Yes. So book 1 it's somewhere between a family drama and a road movie almost, because it's, Kedzie and Brian is the boy's name. Kedzie and Brian trying to reach a destination to make a thing happen that could help the rest of the human race.
Right.
Book 2 is a war movie. And book 3 is going to heavily, heavily fall back to the underpinnings of Lovecraftian horror. It's kind of all the shit has hit the fan, and it's the 11th hour, and what do we do? So I have the entire thing mapped out. I know what the very last page of the book is, and yeah, it's just investing in the next 2 years to get us there.
Okay.
Nice.
Let's see here. So we don't get too backed up. Using the androids would be ingenious. Novel Bros says because they want to have relations with the aliens. I'm guessing in reference to the idea of why didn't the humans just fight the aliens with the androids. I was just going to say that Prometheus probably isn't the worst aliens movie I've ever seen.
Oh no, it's not. I guess like I Prometheus was like one of the last examples of like me placing my faith in the Hollywood system to actually live up to the hype. Because
I lost that after Iron Man 2.
Oh well, yeah, that was really bad. Yeah, to me, Iron Man 2 and 3 don't exist.
Okay, all right.
Fair.
Yeah,
so they're in the ether with Captain Marvel and Thor: The Dark Worlds.
Well, see, I'm the weirdo man. Like, I don't like Thor 1, and I really don't like Thor Ragnarok, and I was okay with Thor 2.
Okay. All right. I mean, I
know.
We're gonna do something here that you very rarely ever see on the internet. We're gonna disagree and be okay with it.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just kidding. But no, there are certain Marvel movies that if you bought me the box set, I would just like take out and leave their faces just blank. What movie goes there? There wasn't a movie there.
Exactly. Like I'm working on putting together this like giant Blu-ray collection that's going to be in like 2 cases of all the movies chronologically in order for when my son's old enough to watch them.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, like, Iron Man 2, 3, the first Thor, Captain Marvel, like a few others in there, like they just don't exist. Like,
right,
like there's enough context in the other movies that you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Stu says, ask Mike about his wife. I hear she's a great artist too? ?
Yes, she is. I like to think so. Selena is very much of the school of manga, and you know the Archie artists like Dan Parent and Dan DeCarlo. She's very much a student of all those guys, and she has like a really warm animated sense to her line work, and yeah, like she same thing, like we're both freelance illustrators professionally. Like she's done greeting cards and she does personal commissions. Like she's had a really interesting career, and once her schedule clears up a little bit, hopefully over the next year or two, we're gonna do a kids based graphic novel and crowdfund it.
Oh, that'll be nice. I always enjoy stuff that I can share with my small ones. Both my kids were Spider Man or Spider Gwen for the 4-year-old
Nice.
for Halloween this year. My so they definitely they really liked Into the Spider Verse is what it was. But again, I like that they have that animated medium out there still, and they're still at least trying to utilize it in a way that captures a younger audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I know some people had an issue with Spider Verse, but I really enjoyed it, and to be honest, it's like one of my favorite Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean,
Yeah,
it
I
didn't
was
feel
surprised.
yeah, it didn't feel forced.
Hmm.
It wasn't
No,
so.
like I
Go ahead.
I always say like what are their names? Lord and Miller, because they produced it and they like helped on the screenplay.
Hmm.
Those two guys, it's stupid that Kathleen Kennedy fired them, but those two guys effortlessly pull off what I think Marvel is so spectacular at failing at in terms of their diversity initiative.
Oh
Like
yeah,
because they understand that it's about the characters, and like no one
Right.
really cares about like what genitals they have or what their skin color is.
no. Um, we really don't, and we've had we've had people on here from all walks of life. Everybody is welcome to come on, and as long as they talk about things that, as long as they don't like try and start anything volatile or anything like that, everyone's welcome.
Sure.
And we've had a guest on before, Mr. Q from Out of the Darkness. He's a frequent guest on the Nick Ricada show as well. Very
Okay.
very politically driven guy, but we've talked about Captain America and the because he wasn't familiar with the Falcon becoming Captain America until it happened in the movies, right? So
Oh yeah.
we talked about it happening in the comics, and I have maintained forever that they really missed the mark by not calling the Falcon the American Eagle.
Yes. That's a
Um,
good point, man.
you should have never called him Captain America. You should have called him the American Eagle, and nobody would have been upset about it at all. You would have given him
No, no one
completely.
no one would have cared.
He would have taken on like a sidekick legacy costume to honor Captain America without being called Captain America, and everyone would have been fine with it.
Right.
You give him the shield. Nobody cares. Give him the fucking shield. Just don't call him Captain America. Steve Rogers is Captain
Yep.
America. He's been Captain America for what, going on 80 years? No,
Yeah,
50.
oh man, like I already see it in my head. Like imagine in the film, like you've got old Steve Rogers sitting there, and like he passes over the shield, and they have their whole exchange, and you could have the Falcon say something to the effect of like, "But I'm the Falcon, I can't," and Steve just cuts him off, and he's like, "I don't know, from where I'm sitting, you look like an eagle."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You even put it in the movie. Ah, yeah. Ah, so good. So good.
Oh, now
Um,
you just made me more upset, man.
yeah. But no, we've had that discussion before, and if you force it and you try and give a character a diverse lifting by taking a traditionally white character, I feel like that's more insulting. I just feel like that's
Right.
more insulting. Like, oh, you can't stand on your own 2 feet because you're a woman, or your specific color. No, you have to be the next Wolverine or the next Iron Man or the next Spider-Man or the next whatever. You can't just be, a new character. It didn't work for Black Panther at all, right?
Right. Yeah, it just it just seems like a consolation prize. Like
Yeah, Luke Cage wasn't
if,
actually the best Netflix show they put out this year, right?
right.
I mean, it was. I was being sarcastic. Luke Cage was the best Marvel Netflix show.
Oh, okay. Like, yeah, that's one of those. That's one of those. Like, all right, we gotta disagree, man. Like,
what did you say, Daredevil?
Daredevil season 1 and 2 are all that exist of the Netflix shows. There's nothing else, man. Like
season
the
one
rest of them are just.
Season 1 of Luke Cage was so good, though.
No, it wasn't.
It was. It was. I liked it so much. It was so. It was.
Okay.
should I just say that I like season 1 of Iron Fist and just like really throw a wrench in this discussion?
Oh,
no, I'll kick you. I'm going to kick you out of the Discord, Eric. You're done. I do traditionally fire him once a show, so it's just about time.
Like, honestly, what it is like, I mean, besides just overall not liking any of the rest of the shows, like my main issue. And this applies honestly to most of what Netflix is producing these days, is they have their Netflix formula, even down to like the cameras that the shows are shot on, the lighting, the editing gear that they use. Like everything that Netflix produces has the exact same beats in the exact same place. They're all shot the same. They all look the same. All the actors are lit exactly the same. And it just kind of becomes this homogenous thing where if you put like 2 stills from 2 different shows and said that they were one show, I would believe you. You know, like
right.
I just have this thing where I'm like, okay, so the first episode they're going to like actually put the production value in, and like it's going to hook you with a big cliffhanger, and then episodes 2 through 6 are going to be nothing but talking heads. And then episode 7 is going to have the cliffhanger that keeps you watching to episode 13. But up until then, it's just going to be nothing but talking heads again.
Mm-hmm. And then episode 13 is your big finale.
Right. Like, I can't. Especially now being a parent, like, I don't have that kind of time. Like, if I'm going to watch something, it has to, like, it's got to grip me, you know?
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely understand. I did enjoy Luke Cage, but if it's between Luke Cage and Daredevil season 1, there's no contest. Daredevil season 1 takes it.
Oh,
I just feel like Daredevil kind of went downhill as it went on. I didn't like season 2 as much as season 1, and I definitely didn't like season 3.
I agree with you there. Like, I'm not saying that season 2 is anywhere near what season 1 was, but I still enjoyed it. But
yeah.
So like I purposely left out season 3 because to me, like by that point, season 3 of Daredevil had just been assimilated into that Netflix formula, and I couldn't stand it. Like all the stuff with like flashing back to Bullseye's childhood and the weird stage play bullshit in Wilson Fisk's apartment, like. Like, have you ever seen Ghost World?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, the main character in Ghost World like has to take summer school for art class, and she has this horrible art teacher, and she's like the epitome of every art teacher you've ever had, and she has this black and white film called Mirror Father where she just throws like doll parts into the toilet. Okay. Like the whole time that they're doing all that flashback stuff with Bullseye, all I was thinking of was Mirror Father. I'm like, this is so like high school art class bullshit grade. Like this isn't even storytelling. You're just like, look at this sad child. Isn't it sad that he's sad? Like I couldn't stand it. And oh my God, his team was the Bullseyes. Do you get it?
like some dumb like French art house movie.
Exactly. Right, like The Moon That Drank the Flower or something like that.
Just some French person sitting there staring out a window,
Right.
poking a cigarette, going like, "Oh, I'm so angsty."
Exactly. And not even saying it, it's being narrated by him.
Okay, and before we have a riot in the chat, I was kidding. I did not like Iron Fist.
You didn't like that. You didn't like that flat JPEG of the plane coming towards the viewer and crashing into the mountain,
Oh,
like an
that
episode of
was
Aqua Teen.
Some high quality special effects right there. I thought they really crashed an airplane into the mountains when I first saw that.
I know. I was.
I can't be the only one that just saw them trying to recreate the success of the first season of Arrow. Do I? Am I?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just gonna make Danny Rand's story Oliver Queen's story, right? It's the same thing, right, guys?
Right.
Only he's got a magic fist.
That he can't make work.
And we're gonna push the White Devil thing even more. Like,
Wachuchu.
oh god! And then like the stuff that they did in season 2, where they're like, "Why are you Iron Fist? Why should you be Iron Fist?" I'm like, can we just tell a story here? Wait,
Can we have the can we just have him be the Iron Fist for an episode and see how that works out before we?
right?
We
Can you just put him in a costume, please?
We did have one more question in the chat. Creatively, how was your transition from music to comics?
It was rough in that, you know, like I had spent my entire life loving art and, you know, like tracing and redrawing like issues of, you know, the Archie run of Ninja Turtles, stuff like that. So, you know, I kind of had this base that I could build up on as I grew up. But I mean, basically what it was like, I went to my first concert when I was in freshman year high school, and I had what I thought was a moment like with Batman the Animated Series. I was like, maybe I was wrong, and I want to do this. And you know, I had no musical history, so I kind of had to start completely from scratch. And you know, you have to figure out what you're good at, you have to figure out what you're terrible at, like, and then you have to like build up a dynamic with like a bunch of other guys, and you have to figure how you work together, you know. So it was a lot of fun, and those were some of the best years of my life, and I'm still in touch with all those guys. But yeah, it was like let me put it this way. Every job is a job, like even the fun ones. But you know, like with drawing and writing and comics, it never felt like work. And like 3 or 4 years into the band, like the act of like loading all this heavy gear up into the cars and driving to the show, unloading it, setting it up, sound checking, then still needing the energy to like do, you know, like perform.
Right.
And then dismantle all that stuff, load it back into the cars, drive all the way back home, unload it, and then you get to go home and crash, and you know, you don't wake up till like 12 or 1 the next day. Like,
and starting out as a musician, what was your setup? Like, how high up in the ranks of being like getting gigs did you get? I had friends that made it as far as the we got paid in drinks at the bar. So
sure.
Did you go through that, or did you guys actually have paying gigs pretty early on?
No, it was all like, I mean, the first year and a half, 2 years, it was just it was kind of like freelancing. Like anyone that'll take you, you just take the gig.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like what did you get paid to play for? We got half off our drinks after the show.
Exactly. said I could have one beer.
Oh man, I used to carry drums for a
but
guy
yeah.
for an armband.
Uh-huh.
That was my gimmick. I would show up to his shows and carry his drums so that I could get an armband for cheaper drinks.
Nice, nice.
I'm not gonna be able to carry him back
mean-
out, dog, but I'll get him in there for you.
Right.
I know plenty of drummers that would take you up on that offer too.
Oh man.
Oh, dude, drums are the worst. They're
Yep.
the worst. But yeah, by like year 2, year 3, we were starting to get paying gigs, and like we actually got to play a few of like the more notorious high end up clubs in Chicago. Like the Fireside Bowl, a couple other places.
Okay.
But like what little money we did make just got funneled back into either gas or like saving up for studio time to do that album. Like,
Right, and you never.
so it was never really profitable.
Yeah, you never make back the money that you spent getting there either, really, because
Right.
For the first several years, like you said, you make the money back in gas and studio time and equipment repairs and new strings and new drumsticks.
Exactly.
And it never pays for itself until you either get that golden record deal or you get really successful on the local scene.
Trust me, man. Like, there's nothing worse than you don't have the money to buy. 'Cause I was a bass player, and like those like thick gauge strings can be really expensive. Like, there's nothing worse than going to a show and not having an extra set of strings, and like you pop a string and it's just like, what do you do? Like, so you would always just have to borrow like one of the other bands. Like, you would have to borrow their bass guitar. It was, again, like some of the best times of my life, but like the work, I was just like, I can't see this just being the rest of my life.
Right. Not for what it was worth at the time. Like it would have to get better quick, or you would have to make some other kind of choice.
Right.
I
And
understand that.
like, sure. And like I was in the early stages of like maybe forming a company with some of the guys that I was in college with, for like a publishing studio. So it really was coming down to the wire of like, look, you have to make a decision. Like, it's one group or the other.
Right. No, and that's completely understandable. You eventually you have to do what makes the most sense. And like you said, you've got little one now. A little one, multiple.
Right. No, a little one. Maybe
little
another one, but not for another year.
Okay. I didn't figure out that you could take time in between them until I had 3.
Right.
I guess I left the switch on somewhere and they just kept coming. I'm not quite sure. It's all kind of foggy after that, but no. No. Well, I think that's about all we've got. One personal question I do have. Do you read any
Sure.
personal? I mean, do you read any mainstream comics like Marvel, DC stuff? Do you still pick anything up, or are you completely disenfranchised? Where are you at there?
I'm close to being completely disenfranchised. Like, I'm mainly a trade guy.
Yeah.
And at this point, most of the trades that I'm getting are from series that are either canceled or about to be canceled. Like, I still have to pick volume 3 up of the Silencer. I know volume 2 of Hawkman is coming out. I really like Hawkman.
Okay. Now we've discussed Hawkman on this show. Hawkman is he's an acquired taste. I'm not saying there's not great Hawkman out there, but if you try and go back and like do a history on Hawkman, ooh, buddy, it gets dicey. He if you try,
Oh no, 100%, man.
you try and chronologically follow Hawkman, you're like, wait, when did he become an alien? Did I miss something?
Right.
When did that actually happen? Did they not talk about it? And it just
Yeah, and like what Jeff Johns did with the whole like simplifying it and like these are all past lives, but it's one dude. Like, I think that was a clever workaround for like all those decades of just complete horseshit.
well,
But like
DC has the
no,
best.
go ahead.
They have the best way of handling something, I think. When they make a big oopsie like that, they just bury it and never talk about it again. Like nobody brings up that time that Guy Gardner spent as Warrior. Nobody brings up the Azrael Batsuit days. We just don't talk about
Right.
that stuff anymore. Like nobody really brings up. Well, I think they do still occasionally mention that Superman died, but he's died like 4 or 5 times now.
Right.
So just the oopsies. Nobody talks about Amalgam, even though Amalgam still technically exists
no.
out there.
Right.
But it'll never happen again. And that's such a shame because again that circles back to the beginning of the episode when we were talking about 90s comics. Amalgam, so good.
Mhm.
Dark Claw. Dark Claw was everything I wanted in a comic book as a child. You mean Wolverine and
Yeah,
Batman as one guy? Hell yeah.
I got a lot of friends who still hold a torch for Dark Claw.
Yeah, Dark Claw and Spider Boy, man. Like that was just that was a team up I really wanted to see happen, but alas, it's not meant to be.
Right. So yeah, like aside from aside from like maybe 3 or 4 DC books and Criminal from Image, like that's really all I'm reading these days in terms of mainstream stuff.
We've been dabbling into Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run, and so far it's okay. It's I don't think I'm going to keep up with every individual title, but
Sure.
I haven't really seen anything egregiously like bad in it, if that makes sense. And I also have found it interesting what Joe Hill is doing over at DC with Hill House. So
yeah, like that's a really kind of out of left field thing. Like,
right.
what was it? Like earlier in the year when they announced it, I was like, really?
Mm-hmm. Like DC, like not IDW, not where Lock and Key happened.
Right.
But and then they just put out a new Lock and Key book this week.
Yeah, they did. I picked that up. Yeah.
So
it was weird.
I don't know. We obviously as a show we read a lot of different stuff for content, but lately it's been the X-Men stuff, Powers of X, House of X, and those new titles. I gained a lot of respect for Hickman after his run on Secret Wars in 2015, just the 9-issue series that he did. And then going back and reading the lead up to that and how wonderfully it all just kind of blended together, but worked on an individual basis as well. So I kind of have to give him a chance on his run of X-Men. I'm not disappointed with where it's going. I'm just not sure that I'm excited about it yet. If that makes sense. Like I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I haven't been let down yet. I'm just kind of waiting on it. Because other people are writing titles now besides him, and I'm just waiting for somebody to throw a wrench in all of it and just kind of ruin it for me.
Exactly. Yeah, like Selena wants the hardcover of House and Powers that they're going to be putting out, as one big thing. Because like she's a big X-Men fan going back to the 90s as well. But
now that hardcover, are they going to arrange it in reading order, or is it is it going to be released as a one book is House and one book is Powers?
I don't know, but I hope that it's in reading order.
Yeah.
That's what I think makes the most sense to me, because otherwise you're going to have readers kind of like bouncing back and forth between the two halves of the book.
Right, and that's we talked about that a little bit because this is the kind of situation where you can't be a read the trade kind of person and enjoy the story as well because
Exactly.
you know nobody's going to want to bounce between two books to read one story when you could just print it in reading order, which they never do. Like you're never going to get a reading
Right.
order copy of Blackest Night,
Right, exactly.
and that's what worries me a little bit about the trade culture with the way because it stifles the way you have to write your books if you want them to be received well in that format.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, like even with our stuff, like when we eventually put out this the trade of The Gods Fear Me, we're going to be including the mini novellas that we're doing for each book. But you know, I think one of the big publishers would put all three of those at the end of the book, and it's like, no, you got to put those at the end of like each individual installment, because that's like there are going to be like little revelations that feed into like what you just read and what you're about to read. So if you just stick it all at the end, like when people read it, they're going to be like, yeah, I know, you told me already.
Yeah. No, it's almost stuff like that. It harkens back and circle all the way back, I guess. We were talking about Watchmen earlier. Alan Moore, when he
Hmm.
wrote that, he included those Black Freighter segments and
Right.
the auxiliary material in the actual pages of the comic book.
Right.
Those were scripted in the actual pages to be illustrated and printed in the book, so that when it was collected, that all of that stuff was still falling in order of where you were supposed to be reading it. And that's a different style of writing. But nowadays, you've got most of these main creators out here are asking for 3 and 6 issue short stories, basically in comic form, so that it can be published as a trade paperback.
Hmm.
And I really think that takes away because, again, where's the initiative to write a story that ties together between two titles if it's just going to be published in a trade that nobody ever reads like that?
Right. Right.
So that's
Well, when they put it out, I'll let you know how they segment it.
yeah, definitely. That's something I'm gonna have to look into as well. But anyway, I think that's about all we've got. I definitely appreciate you hanging out with us. Uh, it's been a very interesting show. You've got some really, I mean, you've got some really interesting takes. Like I've not had the kind of wherewithal to ask about the environment a lot before. Usually we're talking about the project because it's not completely funded yet. So it's interesting to do a show
Sure.
with without having to put as much emphasis on getting the book funded, but encouraging people to purchase an already funded project. I think that feels a lot lighter, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
You don't feel like
it,
it's not as much pressure almost.
I get you. Yeah,
It's
like I never really stopped to think about that side of it, but I imagine there's got to be a lot of pressure on the parts of like people who like host YouTube streams, because it almost becomes this thing of like if the numbers on the book don't go up like within a day or two of your stream, like do you feel like that reflects on you? Like I never
we
really stopped to consider that.
we've got a really small show, so we don't
Mhm.
really take it as an affront. We have a, my main thing is I want people to be able to point their books, point their people to these shows and clip out stuff from them and be able to do whatever if they need to answer questions and just let them talk about whatever they want to talk about. But actually going into to detail about the path to getting to funded after the fact, I mean, that was absolutely fascinating.
Oh, thanks, man. And again, thanks for having me on. And I enjoyed hanging out with you guys.
Thanks for coming on. Like I said, I look forward to The Gods Fear Me. Um, this is due out. Like, when are you planning on trying to ship this?
Yeah.
Tentatively.
So, all right. Well, exactly. So again, there's a lot of moving parts into this whole thing, but the main issue is we listed April of next year on the assumption that we were going to hit within that first 30 days.
Okay.
And because we had to extend, that's kind of thrown a wrench into some of Kristen's schedule stuff. So realistically, I'm hoping that we can have the book out by like mid to late June.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that's still not that far away. And, like I said, the one thing that we've talked about a lot, especially when we reviewed Cyberfrog on the show, with a project like this, we're seeing that our community, whether it be called Indie Comics or Comics First or Comics Gate, whatever it is, they're willing to pay beyond a $5 price tag. They're willing to wait beyond a monthly release schedule for quality work.
Right.
And I think that
Right.
speaks more volume to anything in the Indiegogo, Indie Comics, Comics Gate sphere. I think that's a bigger compliment than even being a mainstream publisher. Is that you've got to work out there, and every time someone purchases one of your books, that's a sale. That's not going to sit on a shelf somewhere and not get sold. That's not going to end up in a back issue bin somewhere. And the people that have these are going to be the only ones that have this experience, even if you publish this book 10 more times in the future.
Exactly.
It's the experience you get from being a part of this and waiting with bated breath on it getting funded along with the creator. I think it's just one of the greatest things about this whole indie movement.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I don't mean to put down the work that some people in mainstream comics are obviously putting into their titles, but it kind of makes comics, special and unique again, instead of just this almost like fast food conveyor belt thing of all right, it's Wednesday, what's out this week? Oh, okay, they're shipping this book 3 times this month, so here's the next issue. There's none of that. It's oh my god, Cyberfrog's here, look at the, it's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made a point of that when we actually reviewed it. God, it's been 2-3 months ago. And that's the thing, now that it's shipped, nobody's talking about it anymore. It's not a big deal anymore. It was the biggest deal in the world when it was a little bit late, but now that it's shipped, it's all quiet on that front. Now we're back to hating Ethan because he's Ethan again, not because of the cartoon.
Right, and they tried to. They tried to make an issue out of fluting, which I had to look up to find out what even that meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm okay, so that's just paper. Nonsense.
Yeah, ink saturation on paper. That thing that happens in most mainstream comic books.
Right, exactly.
But no, anyway, I definitely appreciate it. It's been a pleasure having you on and talking to you. You're more than welcome. Just let me know anytime in the future you want to come on and shoot the breeze about anything that's happening or has happened, or any old books you want to talk about, or new books, anything like that.
Cool, man. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I'll definitely be stopping by again.
All right, we'll definitely appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Have a good one, everyone. Ayrton, thank you again. Everybody in the chat that showed up to ask questions or just participate. Not calling for me to fire Ayrton. Cartoon canceling Ayrton in the chat. So, as always, you guys are great. And until next time, I guess tomorrow when we look at Watchmen episode 4.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Have fun.
No chance you want to come back for that one, right? You don't want to come.
Oh no, I'm good, man.
You
I'm
sure?
all booked up.
Okay,
Oh,
right. Okay.
Well done.
Yeah, I understand. It just I heard your text message go off in the background there. I understand. As soon as I said Watchmen
Yeah.
4, you're like, no, can't do it. Sorry. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Everybody in the chat, have a good one. Check out the Indiegogo link below in the description. Check out Mike on Twitter at Chibi_Mike. All that down below. Anything else, guys? Or
No, it sounds good to me.
Just good night, everybody.
good night, guys.
Later.